From 1981 to 1986, Gang Green experienced moderate success that included 4 playoff appearances and an AFC Championship game appearance. But from 1987 to 1989, the playoff berths disappeared. Going forward, perhaps some fans are feeling pessimistic heading into the 90s, but what transpired for Jets fans was one of the wildest decades a football team could ever have experienced. 90 Sports Nostalgia presents the New York Jets in the 90s. For the 1990 NFL season, Bruce Coslet was hired to be the new Jets head coach. Now Coslet, he was a Bill Walsh disciple, and in the late 80s was the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. While in the Queen City, Coslet was important in making the no-huddle offense into something special. Heading into the 1990s, there was some young talent on defense for Jets fans to perhaps get somewhat excited about in Eric McMillan, James Hasty, Jeff Lageman, and Dennis Byrd. As for the offensive side of the ball, the Jets still had some talented players. More on these guys later on, but these players would be on the downside of their careers. Perhaps that prompted the Jets to select running back Blair Thomas 2nd overall in the NFL draft, and then select wide receiver Rob Moore in the first round of the supplemental draft. With the selection of Blair Thomas, this is considered one of the worst selections ever made by the Jets. Thomas first held out of training camp until the 3rd preseason game. Then for the rest of Thomas's career, he never got a large portion of carries as the backfield workload was shared with 3 other backs. The Penn State product also had injuries, but nonetheless, not a selection that worked out for the Jets. But as for Rob Moore, he became a really solid NFL wide receiver. The New York Jets finished the 1990 season with a 6-10 record, a 2-win improvement from the previous season under first-year head coach Bruce Coslet. Now for the 1991 NFL Draft, the Jets, they did not have a first-round draft pick due to the Rob Moore selection in the supplemental draft, which led to an interesting situation. The director of player personnel was Ron Wolf, who was extremely high on quarterback Brett Favre. In fact, both Wolf and then Jets GM Dick Steinberg thought Favre was the best player in the 91 NFL Draft. But as mentioned earlier, the Jets did not have a first-round draft pick. Wolf said he thought there was a deal with the Phoenix Cardinals to move up a couple of spots to get Favre in the 2nd round, but the deal fell through. Thus, the Falcons, they drafted Brett Favre at 33, in which then Falcons head coach Jerry Glanville did not agree with that selection. Then with the very next pick, after Favre, the Jets selected quarterback Browning Nagel at number 34, who was a quarterback Glanville wanted. Subsequently, when Ron Wolf went to Green Bay to be the GM there, he traded to acquire Brett Favre. But anyways, for the 1991 NFL season, the New York Jets had a 2-win improvement once again, but this time, New York made the playoffs with an 8-8 record. However, the Jets lost to the Houston Oilers in the postseason, as this would be the last playoff win for Houston as the Houston Oilers. As for the Jets, after making the postseason for the first time since 1986, adversity to come and make the following season a challenging one, with the end of an era in New York Jets football history on the horizon. Enter the 1992 season for the New York Jets, and there is a lot to digest here. First, Jets quarterback Ken O'Brien, he held out of training camp to get a new contract. Thus, Browning Nagel became the starter, who played great in his first game of the season, but like so many young quarterbacks around this time, he really struggled in his other 12 starts. O'Brien did replace Nagel later in the year, but then had a season-ending injury. Moreover, Jets defensive end and 1991 second-team All-Pro Jeff Lageman, he had a season-ending injury early in the season. Then near the middle of the season, wide receiver Al Toon suffered a concussion, as it was his 9th concussion in 8 seasons, forcing Toon to retire. And let me just say this. Whenever I saw Al Toon play, he was always making catches and getting yards. People look back and say, oh, the Jets, they could have had Jerry Rice in the 85 draft. And I think that's very unfair. Toon was a tremendous wide receiver. In fact, Toon was arguably the best wide receiver in the AFC in the late 80s. He led the NFL in receptions with 93 in 1988. So the Jets, they lost Lageman and Toon for the season due to injuries. But the injury that really made headlines was during a Week 13 loss against the Chiefs. Jets defensive end Dennis Byrd was showing a lot of promise. He attempted to sack Chiefs quarterback Dave Craig, but Craig stepped up in the middle of the pocket, which led to Byrd colliding with a teammate. As a result from the collision, Byrd suffered a career-ending spinal injury and wasn't able to walk at first, but after extensive therapy, Byrd was able to walk again and became such an inspiration after his recovery from paralysis. So with the season winding down, the Jets experienced a lot of adversity in 1992. But the Jets also had an embarrassing moment during the second to last game of the season. Late in the game, the Jets, they had a 17-10 lead. But the Miami Dolphins, they scored a touchdown late with one of the most accurate kickers at the time in Pete Stoyanovich on the field for the extra point attempt to tie it up. But Stoyanovich, he missed the extra point, and this prompted Jets defense coordinator Pete Carroll to do the choke gesture. And shortly after that, the Jets, they went 3 and out, had a bad punt, and Marino quickly got Miami into field goal range, which led to Stoyanovich kicking a 37-yard field goal with 7 seconds left to give Miami the win. The New York Jets finished the 1992 season at 4-12. 1992 would be the last season for Al Toon and Dennis Byrd. Furthermore, 1992 would be the last seasons in the NFL for running backs Freeman McNeil and Johnny Hector, who combined to make a really good backfield tandem in the 80s. And lastly, 1992 would also be the last season for Ken O'Brien. The Jets quarterback was part of the famed quarterback class in 1983 and became a pretty solid quarterback who had some tremendous games during his time as a Jets quarterback. Enter the 1993 season, and with the Jets understanding that Browning Nagel would not be the answer at quarterback, the Jets traded for Boomer Esiason, who Coslet knew well in Cincinnati. And with confidence dwindling greatly in Blair Thomas, the Jets traded for running back Johnny Johnson, who was a former Pro Bowl running back. The team did improve to 8-8, but would not be good enough to make the playoffs, and as a result, Bruce Coslet was fired, and going forward, things would really begin to get wild for the New York Jets franchise. For the 1994 NFL season, the New York Jets, their new head coach would be Pete Carroll. The former Jets defense coordinator, he had loads of energy, was quite vibrant. Carroll also installed the basketball court near the practice field, took the team out for bowling, he was a jokester, and then he also had some practices that ended in soccer penalty kicks. After 11 games, the AFC was very competitive. For the 12th game of the season, first place was on the line with the Jets hosting the Dolphins. Now, New York, they got out to a 24-6 lead in the third quarter, but Dan Marino, he brought the Dolphins back to be down 24-21. Then very late in the fourth quarter, Marino, he completed a pass to Mark Ingram down to the Jets' 8-yard line with under 40 seconds left to play. With the clock running down, Marino got the team to the line of scrimmage and motioned to spike the ball and shouted to his wide receiver Mark Ingram, "Clock, clock, clock." But instead of spiking the ball, which was expected, Marino took the snap, fired a strike to Mark Ingram for his 4th touchdown of the game. The Dolphins then went up 28-24. Boomer Esiason, he then led the Jets into Dolphins territory, but the Hail Mary attempt at the end of the game, it failed. This was called the fake spike game, as a fake spike was recommended to Marino by Dolphins backup quarterback Bernie Kosar, who was speaking into Marino's headset, as Kosar got the play while he was in Cleveland. But anyways, it was a great call because you don't have to waste a play spiking the ball. But to be honest, as the years went by, I thought this play was a little overrated because I didn't think it caught the Jets off guard that much as people claimed it did. And Dan Marino, he took a 3-step drop throwing towards the outside and was going to release the ball early. And then there were some angles that made it look like Aaron Glenn was with Mark Ingram. And then at this time, I thought Marino and Jeff George were the best at throwing guys open. But however, after seeing the all-22 camera view, the Jets' rookie cornerback Aaron Glenn, he did appear to get a late start as he slipped, which seemed like he was fooled by the play. But this game has always stuck with Jets fans because after this defeat, the Jets weren't the same as they collapsed and lost their final 4 games to finish 6-10. After the season, Jets GM Dick Steinberg, who was a Pete Carroll supporter, had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. Meanwhile, Jets owner Leon Hess thought the team quit on Pete Carroll. Then one day, Hess, who really liked Rich Kotite, who was a former Jets assistant, was recently fired by the Eagles. This led to a coaching change as the Jets fired Pete Carroll after 1 season and hired Rich Kotite. So here's the thing. The Jets, they fired Pete Carroll after his team collapsed and perhaps quit, in which they lost their last 5 games, and this led to the Jets to hire a coach whose team in 1994 was 7-2 at one point and looked terrific. But then they lost their last 7 games to finish 7-9, in which, in my humble opinion, I think is the greatest NFL collapse ever. But nonetheless, enter the Rich Kotite era, as Kotite would be the head coach and general manager of the New York Jets. For Kotite's first NFL draft, the Jets fans were overwhelmingly shouting for their team to draft Warren Sapp. Instead, disappointment greatly oozed out of Jets fans as the team drafted tight end Kyle Brady, and from my point of view, I got one of my favorite quotes ever from a fan. This guy was awesome, talking about the high amount of tight ends on the team and Boomer's lack of arm strength. But to be fair, the next 2 selections in 1995, Hugh Douglas and Matt O'Dwyer, they were decent selections, but Jets fans, they wanted Sapp. As for the team, the Jets finished the 95 season with a 3-13 record. But on the bright side, the Jets somehow found a solid wide receiver in Wayne Corbett, who was cut by a team in the Canadian Football League, but then made the Jets team basically as a walk-on and wound up producing. So due to New York's 3-13 record, the Jets had a number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, and they selected Keyshawn Johnson, who had a tremendous Rose Bowl game, even though it was kind of against a slow secondary in Northwestern. But Boomer Esiason, he would not be thrown to Johnson. That's because the Jets, they signed Neil O'Donnell, who led the Steelers to the Super Bowl during the previous season, but threw 2 horrible interceptions in that Super Bowl, in which Neil O'Donnell is perhaps most well known for. Anyways, Keyshawn Johnson, he would be described as extremely opinionated, brash, and arrogant. During Keyshawn's rookie year, the moment I remember most was during his first ever NFL touchdown, as there were some who thought he celebrated immaturely. Later on, it became a pregame story for one of the networks, I can't remember which one, but the segment didn't put Keyshawn in a favorable light, as there was audio of Jets fans calling into a radio show displeased with Keyshawn's action. And it got worse for Jets fans as his team finished the 1996 season with a 1-15 record, which led to Kotite's firing. This was such a low point for the franchise. Jets football would drastically change for the upcoming season, really making Jets fans optimistic. Bill Parcells, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, will be coming to the New York Jets. But to be able to bring the Big Tuna to the Big Apple, there was an obstacle. That's because Parcells is technically not allowed to coach anywhere because he was under contract with the New England Patriots, but that relationship between Parcells and Patriots owner Robert Kraft was not a good one at this point. So basically what happened, the Patriots that filed a complaint to ensure Parcells could not leave. While this was going on, the Jets named Parcells' top assistant, Bill Belichick, as interim head coach, and Parcells was hired by the Jets as a consultant. Now this did not please the Patriots or the NFL at all, which led to the NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue to broker a deal that allowed Parcells to be the head coach of the Jets, and the Patriots, they received draft compensation, which included New York's first-round pick in 1998. But the off-season craziness didn't stop there, as Keyshawn Johnson released a book detailing his rookie season in which he made some shocking comments, such as calling his receiving counterpart Wayne Corbett a team mascot. He called quarterback Neil O'Donnell a stiff puppet and offense coordinator Ron Earhart as an old fool. This is coming from someone who has only played 1 season in the NFL. Parcells did not comment on the book, but cleverly he decided to put Johnson's locker next to Wayne Corbett's locker. For the 1997 NFL Draft, the Jets, they would have the first overall pick. Now, there was a possibility that Peyton Manning would declare for the NFL Draft after his junior season at Tennessee. Now Manning, he was going to get his degree in just 3 years, and NFL teams, they were not allowed to contact players who had not yet declared for the NFL Draft. And apparently the NFL, they were watching the Jets very closely to make sure that there was no tampering to try to lure this highly coveted prospect to declare for the NFL Draft. Tennessee Volunteers offensive coordinator David Cutcliffe was convinced that Manning would go pro, but instead, Manning decided to stay at school for 1 more year, mentioning that he only got to be a college kid once, and he also received some advice from Tim Duncan, who stayed for his senior season at Wake Forest. So the Jets, they traded the first overall pick and then traded down again to grab linebacker James Ferrier, who became more well known for his time in Pittsburgh. But enough of the Jets offseason. The 1997 New York Jets, they opened the season with a huge blowout win against Seattle at the Kingdom. After 15 games, the Jets, they were 9-6 and were headed to Detroit in a very anticipated season finale with an interesting AFC-NFC team scenario where the winner would go to the playoffs and the loser would miss the postseason. On top of that, Barry Sanders was having an unbelievable season and had a chance to eclipse the 2,000-yard mark. During the game, the Silverdome was extremely loud. The Jets, they led 10-3 at halftime and did a really solid job stopping Sanders. But Parcells was never really in love with his quarterback, Neil O'Donnell, whom he benched for Glenn Foley during the season, but Foley wasn't healthy enough for this matchup. But anyways, Parcells, he tried to do some things to improve the offense during the game. This included inserting an undrafted second-year quarterback who also played special teams in Ray Lucas for a series. During that series, Lucas, now he completed his first 3 passes and then threw an interception. Then about midway through the 4th quarter, and on a 1st and goal with the Jets down 13-10, running back Leon Washington, he threw an interception on a trick play, but if they had replay back then, this interception, it would not have counted. The Jets never got close to scoring again, With New York losing to Detroit and missing the postseason, the Jets improved greatly in Parcells' first season, going 9-7 after going 1-15 the previous season. For the 1998 season, the Jets had made a couple of huge acquisitions on offense with quarterback Vinny Testaverde and running back Curtis Martin. The Jets had started off the season 2-3 but finished extremely strong, winning 10 of their last 11. New York posted the second best record in the AFC, which resulted in a first-round bye, postseason win against Jacksonville, leading up to a matchup against defending Super Bowl champions, the Denver Broncos, in Denver. New York, they had a 10-0 lead in the third quarter, but 6 turnovers hurt the Jets' chances of making it to the Super Bowl as Denver won 23-10. For the 1999 season, the Jets, they're among the preseason favorites to win the Super Bowl, but for the season opener, Vinny Testaverde, he suffered a ruptured Achilles tendon and was forced to miss the rest of the season. After the opener, Rick Mirer would be the one to fill in for Testaverde. Mirer was acquired in the offseason in a trade, but the Jets had to trade away Glenn Foley, who I had the feeling Parcells was okay with, but had durability issues. Anyways, acquiring Rick Mirer, it was kind of perplexing at the time due to how poor his play was with Seattle and Chicago. Parcells chose to draft Drew Bledsoe over Mirer in the 93 draft, and it's been mentioned that Mirer, he could only throw to one side of the field and had problems learning the playbook. The Jets, they struggled with the former Notre Dame quarterback under center, which prompted Parcells to turn to the inexperienced Ray Lucas. But what happened was that Lucas played well, and the Jets finished the season going 6-2 in their last 8 games with Ray Lucas at quarterback. However, the Jets finished with an 8-8 record and did not make the playoffs. After the season, Bill Parcells, he stepped down as head coach of the Jets, and his defense coordinator, Bill Belichick, was named to be the Jets head coach. But Parcells would still be with the Jets as the director of football operations and general manager. Now, from my view, this is what I felt at the time, and perhaps many others, they thought this too. The Patriots, they had just fired Pete Carroll as their head coach, and owner Robert Kraft had a lot of interest in Belichick. But it seemed that Parcells, he really still disliked the Patriots franchise greatly. A lot of this had to do with personnel decisions. But anyways, it seemed like Parcells stepped down so Belichick can be the head coach of the Jets and not go to the Patriots. A day after Belichick was named head coach of the Jets, he resigned the next day and later on accepted the job to be the Patriots head coach and GM. For Belichick, it was quite the selling point, going to a team to be the coach and GM and to get away from an organization where he would be possibly perceived as a Parcells puppet in New York. Also, Belichick would be going to a team and an owner that he was familiar with. At this time, the Jets was going through a change in ownership with a lot of uncertainty. The New York Jets had such a unique, fascinating, and wild decade in the 90s. I could have gone on and talked about the 2000 Jets, which was also quite an interesting season, but I wanted to end it with Bill Belichick because it's strange that the Hoodie had 2 different stints as the New York Jets head coach but never coached a game leading Gang Green. Yes, it was a wild decade, but it was also a decade with some misfortune, as the right pieces never seemed to fall in the right places with the New York Jets. It's hard to imagine a fan base going through a wider range of emotions in a decade. But this is also a decade where New York Jets fans might also look back at and wonder about the so many what-ifs. Real quick, I just want to thank all those who have supported 90 Sports Nostalgia. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and check out the links below for Patreon and merch. Thank you so much. The New York Jets in the 90s.